You're listening to the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse at bellydancegeek.com.
Hello, everybody. This is Nadira Jamal, and welcome to episode 26 of the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse. This episode is being sponsored by Shadia Costume Design, with 30 years' experience in custom design and revamping. To learn how Shadia can make you look like a star, visit shadiacostumedesign.com, and she spells Shadia S-H-A-D-I-A. That is not part of the ad, but I just want to add a little note. I have had 3 custom Shadias and several costumes revamped and adjusted to fit me, and I cannot recommend her enough. Okay, I have really high standards for what advertising I accept, but I was really excited when Shadia asked. So she's great. All right. So the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse is a place where dancers can get together and geek out on all of those topics that are hard to get in classes and on DVDs. It's really easy to get help with the what. So if you want to learn some moves or combinations or choreographies, there are a lot of resources out there for you. But if you want to learn about the why and the how, so things like culture and musicality, history, business, professionalism, that's harder to find. So every month I interview a different guest expert on a different topic, and we always have time for question and answers so that you can geek out too. So if you think that
Uh-oh, where did you go?
I got muted somehow for a second there, so I'm going to pick up where I left off. If you think that knowledge and creativity go together like chocolate and peanut butter, you are in the right place. So my guest today is DeVilla, the artistic director of Isis-Siren-Sekhmet. Elegance, grace, and beautifully executed Middle Eastern dance with an American flair are the benchmark of this LA-based dance company. Isis-Siren-Sekhmet draws upon the magic of old Hollywood and the myths of goddesses, sirens, and legends to craft traditional Middle Eastern dance with their own glamorous and theatrical dance style. DeVilla, a nationally known performer, has trained extensively with world-renowned teachers in the U.S. and in Egypt. She performs as a soloist and with her troupe Isis-Siren-Sekhmet, for whom she functions as artistic director. Equally at home on stage and behind the scenes, DeVilla packs a double punch by seamlessly integrating her 2 full-time careers, professional makeup artist and professional dancer. It's for this reason that Isis-Siren-Sekhmet shows are marked by an added level of professionalism and polish. DeVilla and Isis-Siren-Sekhmet produce their own show at Moon of Tunis Restaurant in Hollywood the first Sunday of every month, and are looking forward to workshops and shows coming up in the summer months of 2014 and beyond. DeVilla teaches privately and at Dance Garden Studio in LA. So let Isis-Siren-Sekhmet lure you into the rocks. You can check her and her troupe out at DeVillaRocks.com, spelled DeVillaRaks.com. And I invited DeVilla tonight to talk to us about troupe leadership. So thanks so much for coming, DeVilla.
Yay, thank you so much for having me, Nadira.
So tell us a little bit about how you got started in Oriental dance.
I had studied ballet up until college, and when I moved to Los Angeles to pursue my career as a makeup artist, my dance life kind of went away. Of course, I never dreamed of being a ballerina anyway. I just loved dance and movement. And so once I got sorted as a makeup artist and got that career running, I wanted to dance again, but I didn't want to take ballet. And I thought I wanted to take flamenco. So a friend said, I don't know where flamenco class is, but I know where this belly dance teacher is, so let's go take her class. That was about it. I walked through the door and never walked back out. I've been doing it ever since.
Excellent. And can you tell us a little bit about your background in troupe leadership?
From about the first year in, when I began dancing and performing, I just knew I wanted to start a troupe. I thought I might want to join a troupe, but there didn't seem to be, at least in my periphery at that time, a troupe that suited me. I am 5'9", so I'm pretty tall, and most of the groups around were smaller and looking for girls who were about 5'6", and so I kind of didn't fit in as Big Bird. So I kind of just figured, well, I might as well just start my own. So that's what I did. I grabbed 4 other talented girls who were in classes with me. 4 of the girls that I thought could get along. 4 other girls that I thought would look good together and dance well together. And they did. We were together for about 5 years, and we were the Mighty Isis Dance Company. And that was my first dance company, and that's how I got started.
Mm-hmm. And then you've since then moved on to other troupe organizations as well. Can you tell us about your other groups?
I have. When Mighty Isis Dance Company folded, all of the women in the group, actually only one of them is still belly dancing. So in the first group, they just kind of all moved off into their own lives. One had a baby, one got a different career. Things happen. Mm-hmm. And I knew I was going to continue dancing, so I did. I continued my solo career. And I started working at a restaurant in Hollywood with 2 other dancers, one named Jamila and one named Celeste. And we discovered that we were very like-minded, very similar in styling, and we formed the Saharan Sirens. And we were together for not a very long time, for about 2 years, I think. And then Jamila became pregnant, and so she moved, into that phase of her life. And Celeste and I both went back on our way into our solo world. And happy to report that Jamila is again dancing. Her daughter is now 5, I believe 5. And then I started from some students because I had been teaching, and I had some very talented students. So I scooped up a couple of them and a third dancer who was performing and studying at Dance Garden. And I grabbed these 3 women who I thought looked very good together and thought could work well together, and formed Isis-Siren-Sekhmet, which is kind of in honor of my first 2 dance companies, and Sekhmet, the goddess, the lion-headed goddess of Egypt. And I just wanted to honor my former dance companies and goddesses and bring us all together and create something beautiful.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk a little bit about troupe leadership. And I think before we get too far into the nitty-gritty, troupe can mean a lot of different types of things. So what kinds of groups are we talking about here?
Well, I think that's the first thing that you have to really sit down and decipher. If you're thinking of forming a troupe, what is it that you want it to be? With each one of my groups, we were something different. The first group was, I don't want to call it the housewife troupe because they were all working professional businesswomen, but we weren't striving to be a professional money-making dance company. My second dance company was a little more of that ilk, and we did do a lot of private parties, and we worked, some clubs and made money. And then this company, I kind of have. We're a professional company. We're not hustling in the clubs. That's not our thing. But we do work professionally. We do make money. We do produce our own shows. And we performed at the Las Vegas Belly Dance Intensive last year in their pro show at Batine's Oasis Dance Magic. I mean, so we're out and around. So you just have to determine, I think, what your true goal is. What do you really want the company to be, and what do you want the company's focus to be? And from there, you can start to choose members who will line up with that idea and fit with that idea. It becomes very difficult when you've got 2 girls you really want to hustle and work the clubs and make money, and 2 girls you're like, I just want to dance a few shows a year. So you really need to kind of start to watch out for those things.
Gotcha. So it sounds like there are a couple of elements in there. So, one thing is whether this is primarily recreational, so kind of in the amateur troupe concept, or whether you're actually out there trying to make money or stature, in the dance community. And that sounds like there's also a level question in there too. How advanced is your group?
Yes, exactly. There's definitely a level question. And going in as a troupe leader, you really have to be very honest with yourself about what you want right off the bat, because if you start to bring in people who aren't capable of dancing the choreography you're creating for them, you run into trouble and disappointment and heartbreak on all sides. So, you need to be really honest with yourself about that too. At what level do you really want to perform?
Gotcha. And, another type of troupe that I'm thinking of as well is, this kind of student troupe where it's led by a teacher and all the members are taking classes with her. Do you lump that in with amateur troupes as well, or do you treat those differently?
I guess I kind of have that with my students. Actually, they're coming at 6:30 for a rehearsal. No, it never ends. I guess they could. I feel like it could be considered an amateur troupe. A lot of my girls are now out working and forming their own groups. Girls from my classes have started forming their own little, mini troupes within the class grouping, which is always very interesting watching them start to form and grow. But I always do try to provide opportunities for my students to perform as well. And then that presents a whole other issue because, your students are always going to want to get into your troupe. So you have to figure out how to, how that all works too. That's a whole other dynamic. It's very interesting. But yeah, I consider them, I would say that's a recreational troupe.
Gotcha. Now, when we talk about troupe leadership, are we always talking about a single leader or are there other options?
I feel like it's open to interpretation. It depends on going in what it is you really want. If you're the creator, if this is your baby and your concept, are you going to be the sole leader or are you going to bring people in to work with you? Do your dancers simply perform the choreography that you feed them, or do they have as much say about what the company is doing as you do? Those are things you all want to weigh. You want to weigh in the beginning as well. Three of my girls have been with me now since the beginning, and that was 2010. Right after I got back from Egypt, I formed Isis-Siren-Sekhmet, and I really try to leave things very democratic, even though I'm kind of the spearhead of decision making. I try to really listen to everyone's input and make it a very democratic process.
Mm-hmm. Now, if a group doesn't have a single leader, what does leadership tend to look like? Is it, the officers' leadership mini team, or is it a complete free-for-all?
Well,
Not
I think
free-for-all, but...
Yeah. I think you have to have some structure in place. I'm sure you can run it like the Girl Scouts, like, where you have someone who's, leading the meeting, someone who's taking the minutes, someone who's doing the accounting, you could do all that. You could go that far to have all that. I certainly delegate within the troupe because especially because, you, as a leader, you need help. I am not the most computer savvy. I've gotten better than I was when we first met, Nadira, but I still need help. So thankfully, I have a couple girls who are really, really tech savvy. So I lean on them for help in those areas. It becomes difficult creating all the choreography. So, I'm asking I have the girls create choreographies to teach the group so that it doesn't all fall squarely on my plate. And at this point, everybody's at a really high level, a very high level of performance, and I feel like they're all capable of creating choreographies. And it's incentive too. I think it's exciting for them to bring a choreography to the table, and it gives them something really exciting to do and to add, and to feel like they're really part of the group.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned delegation. So what are some of the tasks or duties that a troupe leader or troupe officers need to make sure get done? If somebody's thinking about taking this kind of troupe project on, what do they have to be ready to do?
Well, okay, so in any given day, you'll need to establish what your rehearsal schedules are going to be. You'll need to establish what your shows are going to be. What do you want them to, once you've decided where it is you're taking this particular ship, are you going completely pro? Are you working towards a competition? Are you working towards working in just one nightclub or just doing festivals? So once you've got that decided, that will then dictate and determine, okay, so what is our rehearsal schedule going to look like? And what is it going to cost? And can everyone afford to chip in if we're not making the money to cover our own costs? You also might want to consider, I know some troupe leaders have each of their members pay a monthly dues to cover costs of rehearsal spaces and whatnot. So you've got to consider that. You've got to consider the look of your show. You've got to consider the costuming. How does that all get paid for and taken care of? Those are important issues. You'll need to set up the rehearsal schedule. You need to provide a space or make sure that a space has been rented, which I delegate to one of my girls. You'll need to work on publicity. Now in this world, everything is done through Facebook pretty much. That's one of Twitter. Instagram. I mean, I'm always on one of those three, promoting every show that I'm in or the girls are in, everything that's going on, my classes. So there's this constant wheel of publicity that's got to get turned. So it's a kind of a big endeavor. It takes a lot of work, a lot of admin, as well as, time in the studio.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm thinking about this and I'm getting this huge logistical headache. I'm like, I can't imagine trying to get all this done. So, when you delegate, do you tend to do that on a role basis or a task basis, or, hey, can you post this one show this one time, kind of ad hoc basis?
Well, first off, I'm going to tell you it is like herding cats. there's a lot of kitten wrangling going on. And between wrangling my students, my classes, and my company, typically, as it works right now for us in our company, the tasks are pretty much ongoing. Like, I have one girl who does all of our evites. That's her job. That's what she does. She does it in a snap. It doesn't give her any grief or any difficulty. I feed her the information. I send her a picture. She whips it up, and it's done. Mm-hmm. I have another dancer who helps me create the flyers. So all the flyers that go online, Kelsey will help me do, and anything like that needs to get done. She helps me with admin work. She helps for our website. She helps me keep all of our everything current. So that's kind of her thing. Then another one of my girls is the girl who calls and books the studio space when we need studio space. I have a small studio here at my home, but sometimes if we're doing a larger piece, we really have to rent space. So whenever that needs to be done, she just picks up the phone and handles it. And it kind of now, after we've been together since 2010, it kind of works like a well-oiled machine. Like, everybody kind of knows what their job is, and they just handle it. And I love that.
Excellent. Now, earlier on you talked about how it's important to make sure that the troupe knows what it's trying to do. And we talked about that in the context of, is it a recreational troupe, is it a student troupe, is it a professional troupe? But, thinking more about what the troupe is trying to accomplish, artistically, what are some of the big picture questions they should be considering?
Well, I think first, they need to decide if they're all, at the same level. Who's going to create the choreography, and what are you creating the choreography for? Like, where are you going? What is it you want to do? And everyone has their own unique personal goal, I think, within this art form. Some people just want to do it to have fun. And so if the girl who just wants to do it to have fun is in it with a girl who wants to go completely pro, that's going to cause some friction issues right off the bat. That's kind of in the beginning what started to happen with my first company. So there were two of us who really wanted to be and wanted to work more professionally. And we have. And the other girls really just wanted to have a good time, which is wonderful. And they're all still my dear friends. But that's not where I was going. And so I kind of felt like I was beating my head against a wall there. So, I think you just need to really be very, very open and very much on the same page, and make sure that everybody's on that page together.
Mm-hmm. And how do you go about setting goals for your group?
I think that's a matter of, I think it's two different things. For me, I knew going in what my goals were for the company. I knew stylistically what I wanted it to be. I knew what I wanted it to look like, which I think is very important. I knew how I wanted to perform. I knew where I wanted us to go with the company. So I chose specifically, and as I'm choosing, and still choosing when I'm choosing, women who are pretty much in that same place, and want pretty much the same thing, really want to go where I'm going. And I think it's really important to be very upfront with everyone about that. And I'm pretty upfront. I try to be very upfront with what I need from a dancer when she comes into the company, so that she's not, offset by when wait, I thought it was going to be this and it's actually that. Mm-hmm. So I think just being very clear and open is helpful.
Now, I know a lot of organizations are really big on mission statements. What do you think about that for a troupe?
I think mission statements are really important because you can always refer back to it, and that way everyone's clear, everyone's on the same page. Now, having said that, I'm going to tell you that for this particular company, I do have a short mission statement that I had written, and we all looked at it and went, yeah, we all know that, because we were so very clear about everything right from the beginning. But especially if you've got larger groups, I think that it can be a very good and a very important thing to sit down and write from the very beginning, from the offset. And that way when there are questions or concerns or differences of opinion, you have that to refer back to.
So what kinds of things go into a mission statement, or how do you go about making one?
I'm sure there are lots of ways of going about you just sit down and write it. I mean, you just determine what it is you really want, write it down on paper, and get everyone to look at it and or sign it. Some companies do sign contracts. Mm-hmm. I have not gotten into a situation where I have needed to have that. My company's pretty small. I mean, we're 5 and or 6 sometimes, so it's very manageable, and we're very much of a sisterhood. But not all companies are. So, I can see where a mission statement would be very helpful, and that contracts would even be very helpful, especially if there starts to be money involved, mm-hmm. A lot of money involved, and in costuming issues. If you're like leasing, I know one dancer who, while she pays every dancer for her show, they work clubs consistently, many a night, and but her dancers have to rent their costumes, so they pay for the costume in the rental, but they do not get to keep their costumes. So it's a contractual thing that's really important, because if her dancer goes away and leaves with a costume, she's stuck. The $250 or $400 she paid for the costume in Egypt. So, so contracts are important at a certain time and a certain level.
Mm-hmm. So if a group wants to create a mission statement, what kinds of things should they think about putting in there?
I would say the most important first thing is your artistic goal. So I would determine and make sure everyone is on the same page with what your artistic goal is. I think the next thing would be to discuss what your availability is and what is expected of each dancer. So how much time is she going to have to invest? And how much money is she going to have to invest? And the next question, and this can go directly to like how you're choosing your dancers. What exactly is their desire to perform with you and perform in this company? A lot of times I find girls get starry-eyed. They get really excited, and they just think they want to dance with you, or they think they want to dance within the company. But once it gets down to the nitty-gritty of it, their desire wanes. They don't really want to work as hard as they need to work. They may not be willing to pay the financial obligation they said they were going to in the beginning, and as far as purchasing costumes or, paying for rehearsal space. And I've had these things happen. So I think, you want to make sure that all that's really very clear in your mission statement and laid out what is really fully expected of each dancer, because you are going to find dancers who you think are like so gung-ho and so perfect, and they're bouncing around behind you like little Easter bunnies. They want to dance with you so badly. And then a few months later, it's like, oh, it requires work. It requires money. It requires my time. I can't just go, oh, I don't feel good, so I don't feel like coming to rehearsal tonight. And unfortunately, that does happen. And because you're a sisterhood, you start to form these friendships and alliances, and you love everyone. You love your girls. But because you become such good friends, a lot of times, I feel like, too, they can start to kind of, it can happen that they will start to take advantage of that situation. Well, I don't have to go tonight. I don't feel well. Yeah, you know what? I don't feel well today either, but I still have to be here and steer the ship. So you got to be here and dance. So I think if you just lay all that out in the beginning, it's, and it's in that mission statement, you're in good shape.
Mm-hmm. Now, taking a little bit of a sidestep into some of the artistic questions, I know that one of your big visions for your troupe was to have this very polished, very professional, big theatrical look. So, how can troupe leaders go about making sure that the troupe looks like a cohesive whole rather than a bunch of individuals on stage together?
This is really important to me. I mean, maybe it's because I'm a makeup artist, and maybe it's because I work in Hollywood, or maybe it's just because my grandmother let me watch too many Ziegfeld Folly movies. I don't know. But and she did. But I'm very much into cohesion and things looking right. And it really freaks me out if like people's hair isn't curled, or their nail, not everybody's, they're not it's visually it's distracting to me. So like you said, when it was time to create Isis-Siren-Sekhmet, I definitely had a vision for what I wanted. For me personally, first thing first was they had to be talented. They had to have good personalities and all get along. But you have to be a certain height to perform in my troupe. And this comes from a place of I pretty much had been not denied, but unable to apply and or try to get in some troupes because I was always too tall. So I wanted to create a troupe that was a little taller and all about the same height level, so your eye's not distracted from the height for what I'm doing. Now, for other dance companies, I see with girls of all different heights, and they're gorgeous. They still look amazingly polished. They still look professional. They look fantastic. But it's because they've put it together in such a way that it works, and because their choreography is polished, and their hair is all done, and their makeup is done, and their costuming looks right together. So those are the things I'm looking for. If, in fact, you're a student troupe and you don't have a lot of money to spend, that doesn't mean you still can't create a really polished and professional and cohesive look. You don't even have to all have matching costumes necessarily. What about, I have 3 girls who are now performing together from my class, and they did a show, and they each had a purple costume. It wasn't the same color purple, but they matched well enough. They all looked really great together. Their hair was done, their makeup has been done, their nails are done. So they created a really beautiful picture, and they didn't have to spend any money at all. It came from costuming that they already had, and they just put it together and they made it work, and it looks great.
Side note, that works great for weddings too. My sister did that. She just told us all to pick out whatever color green dress we wanted, and there were 5 of us, and there were all 3 different green dresses, but it was very cohesive anyway, and it was really, really considerate of my sister.
Yes, I love that. That was terrific.
She's probably not going to listen to this, but Mel, if you're hearing it, it was great.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the elements that a troupe director should look at when they're talking about making a group look cohesive, either from an appearance angle or a technique or expression angle?
I think all of those things are really, really important. First of all, for me, as a troupe leader and as a teacher, if the dancers who dance with me don't dance the way I dance, if you're dancing my choreography, it is visually distracting. It's different. It looks different. And so it's really important for me, technique-wise, that the girls who dance with me perform my technique. They don't have to do it all the time. They don't have to do it on their own. I have one dancer now who's also performing in a tribal company. When she's tribal, she's tribal. When she's with me, she's with me, and she knows how to do that. So I think having some level of very conformist technique so that everybody's kind of on the same page. Everybody's doing this particular move exactly the same way. Everybody's hand is exactly the same. Is your palm facing out or is your palm facing in? Little things like that, little details really make a huge, huge difference.
And is that in 45 degrees or 15 degrees?
Exactly. That's exactly. And is your elbow slightly bent or is your arm, those little things make a big difference. Same thing with face. What is your facial expression? What is the mood of the piece? What are you emoting? Because if you've got one girl who looks like she could start to cry in about any second, and another one who's all grins and smiles from ear to ear, you know, and, and the song is about a little boy who just lost his mother. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's really important to try to put all that together. Or I'll have breaks in the music where, okay, so this is where the veil does this, and we slide our arm this way, and you look over your shoulder, and it's smoldery.
Huge.
Yeah. So your face is going to emote that I'm smoldering at you, and you're going to turn around and walk away. And then when you turn back, you're going to smile at them. So it's really important so that everyone's on the same page and doing their own version, because, you know, it's going to be your own version, but still emoting the same thing. Right down to that kind of like little detail. Mm-hmm. I find those to be hugely important.
Now, you mentioned, everybody looking over the veil at that point, and that's another thing that I've noticed can really break the cohesion is just where everybody's eyes are going. You know, even if you've got the same emotional content, if one person's looking up and another person's looking down, you know, we zoom in on the eyes. Your eyes tell the audience where to look, and so that can really create kind of this distortion effect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important that everybody has, when we rehearse, we get the piece, and then we get the minutia, and then we sit down and really talk about what our faces and what our expressions are and where we're looking and who we're looking at and what does this piece mean? What are we trying to convey? That's really important stuff. It's really, really good.
Now, you know, all of these little, you know, technical details, especially of, you know, what angle are we holding our arms at? You know, are we starting this circle at 3 o'clock or at 4 o'clock? You know, all these little tiny details are things that we're not really trained to synchronize in class. And this is, you know, one of the big things that I had to get used to when I was switching over from Western dance, is that, you know, in Oriental dance, we're really trying to cultivate our own unique expression. And it really doesn't matter if we're starting, you know, at this angle versus that angle, but when you're in a group, it does. So, you know, how do people who are being raised in, you know, this very individual expression kind of context, which is perfect for soloists, that's what you want to cultivate for soloists, how do you learn how to do all of those small things, especially when you've got, you know, experienced dancers coming together, maybe dancing with others in a troupe context for the first time?
Yeah, this can be problematic. Because Oriental dance, you know, as you just said, you really want it to be your own personal expression. And the beauty of this dance and this art form is that it looks different on every single woman, and it can be done slightly different by every single woman. And that is the beauty of it, that it embraces all of us. You know, unlike being a ballerina where you need to be this tall and this thin and this and have this kind of turnout and this. Every woman can be a belly dancer. Every woman can accomplish some level of proficiency in this art form and feel good and look beautiful. So when you bring women together to do exactly the same thing, exactly the same way, it's near impossible. It is really near impossible with this. We try to button it up as closely as we possibly can. But also, too, we each have a different, even though we try for sameness as we can be, we each have different personalities, so we each have a slightly different way of looking cheeky, or a slightly different way of looking sultry, or a slightly different way of having a big, broad smile. So I try to embrace that, because knowing that not everybody can be, it's not always going to be exactly the same. Unless you're going into a competition situation, then that's a whole other game. So yeah, it's difficult and you want to allow your dancers to feel like they have their own self-expression too. You don't want them to feel like they're just, you know, robots, you know, copying every move Mama D makes with my hands and my eyes and my face and my, you know, I want them to feel like that they're expressing and emoting themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've always thought about, you know, kind of the belly dance versus Western dance thing as flowers, right? If you're in ballet, you want a bouquet of completely identical red roses, because the beauty is in this big gathering of rosebuds that are the same size and the same shade and the same level of openness, and it's what you can do with the bouquet, right? And then in belly dance, you have this like crazy bouquet of wildflowers where we're all supposed to be different colors and different shapes and, you know, different types of flowers and all this stuff. And what I think I'm kind of getting from this is that with a troupe, you need a bouquet of different kinds of white flowers. You know, like you said, like wedding bouquets, sometimes you need that really clear, cohesive, we belong together, we are totally, you know, on the same theme, but we are all a little different.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I love the way you just put that too, Nadira. That was beautiful. It's true. It's like we are kind of all a bunch of wildflowers. You just kind of try to, depending on what your look is, it doesn't have to be like my specific look is, you know, it's very, very specific. Some troupes aren't that specific, so your wildflowers can even be a little different. Mm-hmm. But I love that, wildflowers, explaining it that way. That's perfect.
Thank you. All right, so, you know, now have we covered everything that you wanted to talk about in terms of cohesion?
I do believe so. Oh, hair and makeup. I have to discuss this one because, you know, of course, it's near and dear to my heart. You must make sure that your hair and makeup are done and that you have some conversation about how they're to be done, so that you don't have one girl's ponytail on top of her head and another girl with a big old wig and another girl who didn't bother curling her hair at all. We are as exact as, here is your nail polish, you will use this one. Or this color from not all shows, but for the bigger shows, and makeup styling, because I'm a makeup artist. I have taught all my girls workshops in makeup, and so we know, like, okay, are we doing the smoky eye look? Are we doing the Arabic look? Are we doing it with blue eyeshadow, or are we using purple eyeshadow, or what is our theme? I think it really helps if you try to get on the same page with all of that. You know, are we wearing a hair flower? Is it on the right or the left? Little things that add up to a lot. So consider those things when you're, you know, putting yourselves together too. And this works straight across the board for any troupe, for, you know, tribal, on cabaret, and everything in between. You know, I just feel like you need just the slightest little thought about it will help pull it all together, giving it a little bit of time.
Exactly. And, you know, as you were talking about before, with costuming, you said tribal, which is what has me thinking about this, is I've seen a lot of tribal troupes do a really great job of, like, variations on a really obvious theme. So everybody has a hair flower, but each person has a different color and type of flower. But they wear it in the exact same spot, and it's about the same size. You know, and that has that really nice, you know, cohesive theme without necessarily being completely identical thing, too.
Yeah. Tribal has the wildflower thing down. I think they do it so beautifully well. It's gorgeous how you'll see a tribal group. They're not all wearing the same costume, but it's a variation on a theme, and they look fantastic.
Mm-hmm. All right. So stepping, you know, back into kind of logistical questions, how do you choose the right members for your troupe?
Well, it can be tricky. It can be tricky, and there are lots of different ways of doing it. Most people hold auditions. Many hold auditions. I mean, it, of course, depends on what kind of troupe you're going for and how you go about starting your troupe. You know, if you're a girl in class and you want to start a troupe, you just grab the sisters that you want to work with and go. Knowing, too, that in doing that, some feelings might get hurt, but then that's always part of it. For me, I kind of hand select who is coming in. I try to be very mindful of personalities and who will get along. I also have to consider who will work, who really wants the work, who wants to do the work, who has time to do the work. Because we're a professional company, we do work and we do make money and we are out there. But we also get, you know, some pretty high profile gigs. It's very imperative to me that everybody be at a certain level. So I have to make sure that these girls are proficient and can do the choreography that I'm going to teach them, and that they dance the way I dance, that they move pretty much the way I move. Our arm isn't going to be exactly in the same place all the time, but at least if it is most of the time, you know, that makes a huge difference. So that's how I choose. I tend to select from my heart and my gut and my head, hopefully. I have made mistakes. I won't tell you in any way that I'm a perfect troupe leader. No one is, I don't think. But I know that I'm not. But I do the best that I can. I'm a Cancerian with a Libra rising, so God forbid, I hate confrontation. I want to scoot away from it as quickly as possible. And then the other part of me wants to make it all balance. So I do the best that I can. I truly try to come from a place of love in dealing with all my dancers because I do love these women. I love all of them. But then for more professional companies, when you're just, you're working clubs and there's an audition and you get selected for your talent and for your skill level and for your look, and, then they don't really care if you guys love each other so much. It's about the work. So put the costume on, shut up, and go to work. And that's kind of the way that works. Make the money and go. And hopefully have some fun in between. So there are lots of different ways of selecting, I guess I'm saying. You can just grab your sisters and go, grab your dance sisters and go. You can, as I do, kind of select. You can hold auditions for any level of troupe. Troupes who are like mine do still hold auditions. And I may well hold one next year. And then if you're a professional company that's just working the clubs, you're going to audition, you're going to get the girls, you're going to tell them to, shut up with the costume on and go. And hopefully they have some fun out there while they're doing that too. And the girls that I know are having fun. So.
Now, when you're looking for people, you've mentioned hand selecting people, you've mentioned holding auditions, but a little bit earlier you said that people sometimes ask you. Do you ever accept them? How do you gracefully say no when you don't?
Well, it's very tricky. Typically, I have found that sometimes some of the most gung-ho people who really, really want me to take them on have seemed to be the ones who don't have the desire and the time in the end, oddly enough. It's very peculiar how things do work out. And for different reasons. Everybody's got their different reason. Maybe people start working with a troupe and they discover, this isn't the perfect fit for me. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay. And it doesn't mean we can't love each other and we can't be friends and we can't still be girlfriends and hang out and have a lot of good laughs. But sometimes you get into something and you realize, this isn't exactly what I wanted or what I thought it was going to be. Or maybe you just lose interest, or maybe you get busy doing other things. So, those things do happen. But I can tell you, and I tell my girls this in my classes from the very beginning, because there are girls who, in my advanced classes who, you start to know that maybe they are interested in joining your company. Everything you do from the time you begin matters. Every relationship that you form, every kindness that you extend, and every time you snap at someone or are snarky with someone or are manipulative, like those things start to form your reputation as a dancer, and you start to get known for them. And so pretty much when I'm selecting, I will kind of steer clear of people who I know may have been problematic at one point or another. Even if I personally love them dearly, I love all my girls. They're all great. But you start to watch, like, maybe she's a better soloist. Maybe working with groups makes her a little fussy. Maybe it doesn't work that well for her. So you kind of just start to pay attention to people and how they act and interact and react to things, and try to get a good feel for them in working with them through, classes, and seeing what they're doing out there in the world. If they're already performing, what kind of relationships are they forming, and how are they performing and getting along with other people. I just try to pay attention. Not always perfect, but I do try to pay attention from the very beginning,
And if you do end up with a bad fit, what do you do about it?
Well, it's really tough. It's really tough, and it can be heartbreaking, and it can make you cry a lot. If you're the little Cancerian in me, I do spend hours in my shell being very sad about bad fits and laboring over what to do and how to handle it, and how not to hopefully harm anyone. Unless you think they're out to harm you, and that too does happen sometimes. But for the most part, I don't have those issues. I really don't. I work I work with women who I love and care for. And so I just try to be as honest and realistic with them and as open and converse with them as much as possible about what's happening and why the dynamic is or isn't working. And often they will go on their own. You know, I try not to have to fire, let anyone go, you know. I try to hopefully let them go on their own because I want them to feel powerful about it more so than me feel powerful. I think the most important thing, and something I forgot to say is at the onset, is no matter what you are, what troupe you're working with, and what kind of troupe you're working with, you have to remember to check your ego at the door because it's not all about you anymore. It's about the cohesiveness of the whole and the good of the whole. And hopefully within the whole, they'll be thinking about you and love you too and want you to be well. But that's my biggest goal because I never want to wound anyone. I know in my beginning belly dance life, I saw girls get wounded, and I was wounded in ways too. We all are. Things happen. So I really try to be really cautious about that. And like I said before, I'm not perfect, but we do the best that we can, and I always try to do the best I can for the whole group. And typically when I have to make decisions, they're based on the whole group. It's not just me, like, oh, I'm mad, so this is my decision. I really, it's not about that. You know, it has to be what's the good of the whole. Is someone holding the whole back? You know, is someone disruptive in your group? You know, so you look at those things like, is she disrupting my rehearsals? Is she causing issues for other girls? Is her behavior causing drama that's unnecessary? Or is she just not ready? You know, sometimes those things happen too. So, and in which case, will she be ready in, 3 months? Will she be ready in 6 months? Is it the possibility that she could come back? You know, those kinds of issues. So you just try to balance it all. You know, there goes the Libra. Let me make all this work out. And hope that, yes, there's a hurt and there are going to be tears at times, but you just kind of have to hope that, that people understand, that it's for the greater good and even for their good. In the end, it's for their good as well,
I think another thing that I've seen be really important in other contexts, like workplaces and things like that, is that it's really important for the leader to talk to somebody about what their expectations are, even if they have the big talk at the beginning. If something's not going well, then, just talking about whatever it is that isn't going well. So,
Exactly.
Maybe they've been missing rehearsal, saying, well, it is really important that you show up for this. We need to make sure that you're here for this. Or, because sometimes I think people are so excited during the initial phase that they're not necessarily thinking about the reality of it. But if they are really committed to staying with the group and being a contributing member of the group, they can clean up their act, but sometimes they don't necessarily know what they're not doing as well as they should be.
Yeah,
and, I've had bosses who, wouldn't tell me what they wanted differently until there was a problem. And I'm like, if you told me this 3 months ago, this never would have been a problem.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely, and that kind of ties into what I was, just saying about girls getting in and thinking they wanted to be a part of this, whatever this is, your group is or my group, and then they get in and they're like, oh, this isn't exactly what I thought. Or, still having very starry-eyed ideals about what this is going to be. And yes, I want to dance with you. I just want to dance with you. It's like, but you got to put in the work. Mm-hmm. The work has to get put in. And so I think very, very clear conversations do need to be had. And continuously, and here again is where check your ego at the door starts to come in, because if I'm telling you, you need to work on X, Y, and Z, and this is why I'm pulling you from a piece, because I feel you're not quite up to speed to do this, and it's a very high-profile show, or not a high-profile show, no matter what it is, they're all important, then instead of, pulling back and getting upset, look at yourself realistically as a dancer and go, you know what, I do need to work on that. And she's asking me to improve myself, and it really only benefits me as well as the good of the group. And maybe it will be time for me to come back, and work, with the group later. But right now, then this is what I need to do. So I think those conversations, need to be had, and I know, because I'm the emotional cancer that that I am, that people's emotions and feelings get really, really, really hurt. But it can't be about that. It really has to be about the art and about the group. And are you holding the group back? Are you doing yourself a disservice in not bringing yourself up to speed, and then performing with the group and not feeling like you did a good enough job because you don't do turns well, or whatever the situation may be. So I think very clear conversations need to be had, and hopefully nobody gets their feelings too hurt, and are able to work through, stand up and just work through it. Like, I got to work on that. Okay, I'm going to go do that, and I'll see you later.
I think especially if I think one of the hard things about being the leader in a situation like that is that you have to be brave enough to have those conversations with your people. I know sometimes people try and avoid conflict and just try and keep everybody happy, but if you don't give people the opportunity to, step up and fix whatever's going wrong, then sometimes that ends up in worse hurt feelings.
Absolutely.
Than if you let it fester. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I try to be as proactive. I will say this. I try to be as proactive and open dialogue, and give my girls any and every opportunity to converse with me. The only frustration becomes, when they won't talk to you, and then you don't know what's going on. It's like, I don't know what I don't know, so if you're not communicating with me, I can't help you. Mm-hmm. But, I try to leave, all of my girls know that they can call me at any given moment. I don't care if it's 3 a.m, unless I have to get up at 4 for work. But, I mean, you know what I mean? I'm here for them. I'm here for them in every way, even if it's to tell me, I'm like, Mama D, I just need to talk to you about something personal. This is going on with my boyfriend, and it's causing me trauma. Or, you know what? I just moved, and my life is in chaos right now, and can I take a month off? Yes, we can work with any of that. As long as people are open and honest about what it is they have going on and what they have to do, I think it's, it can work. It can all work. I mean, I've just had several girls who've just had major life changes, getting married, buying a house, changing careers. One of my girls is an actress, so she gets to, she's like, I got to go to Atlanta and shoot a movie. It's like, woohoo, good, go do it and come on back. And so I just kind of have to, love these women, because my girls all have professional careers aside from their dance careers. So I just have to kind of balance all of them, and I'm here to do that. I'm happy to do it as long as they're telling me what they need. As long as they're telling me, I can try and help give it to them. But if they're not telling me, then I don't know, and that's when, the frustration can kind of start to set in from both sides.
Mm-hmm. So taking a slightly different angle on, things that can go wrong, how do finances play into troupe life?
Huge. Finances can be very tricky. Like I said, I know some troupes who, do dues. They have dues every month to cover their expenses. We don't do that. The way that I handle it is that girls are responsible for most of their costuming. I try to purchase a lot of the costuming as well, and my own costumes. So, there goes my retirement. And we all chip in for rehearsal spaces most of the time. That's kind of how we work that. And I find that, if most of the time, you have desire, and you have availability, you have personality, and you have finance. Most of the time, if the girls have the right personality and the availability, and they truly have the desire, they're always going to find the money to dance within your company. They're always going to find the money to work with you, to pay for rehearsals, to pay for costumes. If they start telling you they don't have cash to pay for rehearsal and they can't do it when the other girls are chiming in their, $12 or whatever it is, and they can't even afford that, and then you see that they're, have plenty of money to spend on other things, then you got a problem. It's like, wait a second. perhaps if you didn't buy 4 Starbucks a day or whatever, whatever the issue is. So finances are hugely important. You have to make sure, and that's in the mission statement, and that's spoken about right from the beginning, that everybody's on the same page with that as well. Publicity I try to cover. I try to get our gigs and what we have, like all of that kind of money mostly filters back into the troupe. So any performance money we make at Moon of Tunis during our show, or any money we make doing private parties, I filter that back into the company. All the girls keep their own tips from the shows, but I filtered that money back into the company so that I could afford to pay for new photo sessions and the costuming that I buy and publicity and promotion and that sort of thing. I try not to make the girls pay for, business cards or any of that. I try to keep that. I try to, help keep us sustain ourselves with the money that we make. So that's kind of how I work that.
You've talked about a couple of expenses that a troupe would have, so things like costuming, rehearsal space, promotional expenses. Are there any other expenses that a troupe has that a leader might not be thinking about until they come up?
Travel. Do you wish to travel with your company? Last year we went to the Las Vegas Belly Dance Intensive, which is phenomenal, as you know. And we performed in the Friday Night Pro Show. Very proud of my girls. But they all had to get there, and they all had to find a space to stay in, and where are we going to stay, and what's it going to cost, and how are we going to feed ourselves. So I tried to make that as cost efficient as possible. But yeah, that's yet another expense you have to think about. And I'm sure I'm leaving something out. Let's see, rehearsals, costuming, travel, food while you're traveling. I'm sure I'm leaving some stuff out. But things do come up, yeah, absolutely. Cost of things like competitions. Are you going to do the Belly Dance for the Universe competition with your group? What's that going to cost? Who's going to cover that cost? It's not cheap to do those competitions. So things like that, yeah, all do come up.
And, in your case, you said that your girls generally they chip in for rehearsal space and buy some of their own costumes. Do other troupes distribute expenses differently?
Yes, they absolutely do. Yeah.
What are some of the different models that you've seen?
Well, it depends. Like I was saying, if I know someone who runs a professional company, professional, like all they do is gig it. That's all they do. And she books the gigs. She deals with the finances. She will then pay her dancers. They will also be renting costumes from her. So they will make what they make per show, whatever that is determined. And she makes what she makes that way. And that's how she, but she purchases all the costumes, gets them gigs, gets them set up, teaches them the choreography. They learn the choreography, and boom, they go. So that's one way that you can do it. If you're not a professional troupe and you're just, all working together as recreation, and it's just your thing, then pretty much everything just comes out of pocket for every dancer. That's the way we did it in pretty much in my first company, in the Mighty Isis Dance Company. Everybody would just, pay for their own stuff, and we go. And so there's several different models. There's another model where you can have your dancers in your company pay a monthly fee to dance with your company, and then that money gets filtered in to pay for, like troupe costuming and publicity materials and rehearsal spaces and whatever needs to be covered for the troupe. So there are several different ways you can work it. It just depends on what you're going for and what works, for you.
Mm-hmm. And, we've talked about spending money, but what about making money?
Making money is a great thing. Yeah, making money is a really, really, really super thing, and we love that. I say you need to decide what it is you want from the company, because making money can be a real hustle. Is your sole income going to be from your belly dance company? Because if you're going for that kind of hustle, then you got to hustle, and that means your troupe leader, like I said, will probably be taking a chunk for her services as your troupe leader and putting everything together and paying each dancer a certain amount per show. And you may do 3 shows a night, or more, and drive back and forth across town to do that. Or you may be a soloist and hustling it to make that kind of money as well. And then it's a little easier because you're just hustling yourself. So you have to make those connections with the clubs and the club owners and try to get the gigs. And, are you going to have to underbid another company in order to get into a club that may already have a dance company working there? So there are all those kinds of things to start to consider. If you're really clever and really crafty, and I've been watching a lot of this go on, girls will start to find new venues. Like, keep your eyes open and look for new venues where you don't have to step on any toes, where they might be, oh, you know what, we're a new hookah lounge, and you know what, we might be looking for a dancer or a dance company. What would you charge us? And there again, you want to find out what the going rates are in your town or your area so that you're not underbidding, because you don't want to do that, because that is a whole disservice to your entire community, although it's done. And, there is that kind of backbiting out there. I would love to say it's all harmony and love and peace and wonderful and good, and everybody loves everybody, and we're all just going to uphold these certain standards. Some people don't, but we all know that, too. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to be that girl. So you want to go with what's the going rate. I have a going base rate for what my troupe would charge for, certain different shows, private party, and or is it, what kind of party is it? Where is it? What are the logistics? Are there costume changes? How many dancers do you want? All those things factor into what you want to charge for your show. For our company and the way we work, I put together our Moon show at Moon of Tunis Restaurant in Hollywood, which I love, and we do make a bit of cash there doing that show, and everything that we make there I filter back into the company, pretty much, and I pay my guest dancer as well for her efforts. It's not a lot of money, but I do pay my guest. I have one special guest artist usually every show, and I pay them because I feel that it's the honorable and right thing to do. I believe we should all be getting paid for our art. But it's also good to do charitable events as well. We just did one for the holidays. Those are really important too. So you just have to know, like, what is it you want to do and what are you willing to do, and how much money is it you're looking to make? Are you just looking to make enough money to keep your company going, which is kind of how we work? Or you really want to hustle and you want to make a living, doing this? I don't, because I'm a professional makeup artist, and I work crazy amounts of hours during the week, usually if I'm working on a show. So for me, dance has always been supplemental income. And at times when Hollywood kind of left Hollywood, dance was a big supplemental income. Huge portion of my income was coming from dance for a time. I'm very thankful, blessed, and lucky that I had this skill and that I could hustle it as a soloist and a teacher to make money to keep the roof over my head and my dance company going and my dance studio open. But you just have to know what your goals are. Again, like with every part of this, like, where are you going? What is it you want?
Mm-hmm. Now, in the event that you are making a profit, how does that money get distributed? Is it among everybody equally? Does it scale by seniority or by role?
As I was saying earlier, you for some shows it would be equal pay for every dancer, and depending on how you want to work it, if you're the creator and you've done the choreography and you've booked the gig and you're getting your dancers dressed and you're doing a chunk of the work, so what if that's the case and that's how you're working and you want to pay yourself for that, I say by all means you absolutely should, as you are the creative driving force behind this company. So you pay yourself a percentage, and then you pay each dancer equally who's performing. And, corporate parties are great. You can ask for a lot more money at corporate gigs, and then you can afford to pay your dancers well, so they get a nice little chunk for that. But those are things to consider. I mean, you definitely want to pay yourself. You don't want to not be paid for the work that you do. So I would definitely say that's a consideration.
I have never been in a formal troupe. The closest I've ever been to that was my teacher and some classmates when she had a professional class. We did a couple of weddings together, so we had, a single group piece that we all knew, and then we each had a solo in this larger show. And the way that was distributed was the teacher got 2 cuts, one for performing and then one for doing all the organization, and then each of us who were performing got a single cut. And that felt really fair, right? It was each of us had a specific job, and the teacher just happened to have 2 of them.
Yes, that's exactly how I try to work it. I didn't explain it quite that way, and I didn't think of it exactly that way, but that's exactly how I think of it. That's perfect. Because you do, like I said, you do need to pay yourself. I mean, this is your art and it's your work. And for all of us, it's blood, sweat, and tears, man. It's a big tap dance to keep it all together and to create choreographies, and especially if you're working still at yet another job, as I do and all of my girls do, it's a lot of work to keep all that together and to keep our promotion together, and So I feel like paying yourself first and paying for everything else secondary is exactly how that works, and that it makes sense to pay yourself once as a dancer and once as the creator and promoter. Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Now, in most cases, the participants are going to have to be putting in some money, even if they end up making money later. How can you make sure that financial commitment is appropriate for everybody? I know that there's a conversation that you can have, during the intake process, but what if, the group is changing? Let's say they've been, doing all local events, and all of a sudden they want to start doing festivals in other parts of the country.
You just have to make sure that everybody's on that page. I mean, there's no way. I mean, you can do benefits to make money. I know troupes that have done that to make money for their group, which actually I'm going to start to look into in 2015, because that's a really great idea. To help finance your traveling, and your gigs in other places. And you just need to, again, I think it all comes back to 2 things. And one is making sure that you're all pretty much on the same page and keeping an open dialogue constantly with the members of your group. And really knowing that everybody wants to do the same thing. And also knowing that, say, for example, just with my girls, I know I have different girls who kind of have all similar, but some different goals. Some want a little more of this, and others want a little more of that. And in the middle, they all want kind of the same thing. So at certain shows, I'll take this bunch of girls who want to go and do this and might be willing to spend more money or put a little more money out to do this X, Y, and Z and having a little more time for that. And for other shows, I might want to choose this group of girls who only want to do this thing, where, a little less money and a little less time needs to be expended because they're busy or don't have the capital or whatever. So I just think open dialogue is what needs to stay, what needs to really be happening all the time in order to, and yes, that's exhausting too, but but so worth it. That's so worth it.
The organizer should be taking 2 cuts, one for running it and the other for dealing with all of the emotional stuff.
Oh, yes. All the emotional stuff, and we're women on top of it. Oh, dear Lord.
Mm-hmm. So, another thing that kind of comes in this idea of like finances or even legal stuff, is this idea of copyright or intellectual property. And when you've got a group of people doing choreographies, that's a lot of intellectual property right there. So, who owns these choreographies that you're creating for the group or in the group?
Well, when you create it, it's your intellectual property. I mean, it absolutely is. But having said that, once it's out there, it is out there. So for me personally, my girls can go and dance any one of my choreographies anytime they want to. My students can as well. And then, like my girls in Yuma, Arizona, shout out to Yuma, and Shell Paris and her girls learned one of my choreographies over the summer that they just performed. And they absolutely have my love and my blessing, and I'm so absolutely thrilled that they would do that, that people are using them. If I give them to you to use, they are there to use. All I ask is that I get, a shout out, a credit. Somebody says, and we're performing a choreography by DeVilla. Now, if there's not the opportunity to do that, if say 3 of my girls have gone off to dance a show for us, I mean, they're dancing my choreography. It's okay. I don't care. Say they're doing their own show and they dance my choreography. As long as they give me a shout out and let it be known that it's my choreography, I'm okay with that too. I don't know. We live in it's the strangest world of the internet now. That people want to put every show they ever did on the internet, and I kind of won't, because I don't want just everyone to be able to have it, to B, copy it, and C, be able to see it over and over again, so they don't want to come see us do it live. Like our Vegas show, I've had people go, put it on the internet. I'm like, well, first of all, that choreography is not finished because I'm finishing that song. And secondly, I don't want to show it to people right now because I want them to want to come and see it when I present it again. I don't want them to go, oh, I just saw it on the internet the other day. So there's the whole internet thing has just changed everything. Did I answer that well enough?
You answered that from your own perspective. So, from a legal standpoint, and we actually had an episode on copyright for belly dancers. From a legal perspective, you own the copyright as soon as it's fixed. So as soon as you've written it down or videotaped it. And you personally are granting people that you've taught it permission to do that, but that permission isn't automatic. So, in another troupe, if a single member creates the choreography and they leave, they still own that choreography. So, the question is, can the group keep performing it or not? So I wonder if that's something that needs to be in your mission statement or your charter or your agreement, so that, you don't 6 months working on something and polishing it and then all of a sudden can't use it, or maybe that is what you want to happen.
Yeah, this is a really good issue. And something that I hadn't been brought to my attention. I would never dance someone's choreography that I did not have permission to use, or if they were no longer dancing with the company and they'd given it to us.
I've heard horror stories of somebody who learned a choreography in one troupe, joined another troupe and taught it to them, and then they started performing the original troupe owner's choreography.
I'm so not surprised by that, and I've heard many, 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 many horror stories like that. I have heard lots of stories. And, I can honestly tell you, you could probably tell me better than I can tell you what the legality and what recourse that particular dancer would have. Like, that's my choreography. Why are you dancing it as your own? And there are times when, you'll see another company and they're dancing something that's very similar to the very same song. You're like, But, I don't know how. I don't know how is Martha Graham on? How has everybody dealt with this situation? I mean, it's a tricky one, huh?
Yeah. Well, I think the legal aspect is probably the least important part of it, and maybe the most important part is just that everybody understands what the deal is.
Yeah, exactly.
Who actually owns it, but who has permission under what circumstances, just so, everybody's on the same page.
Yeah. I feel like, and this is kind of the way that I was trained and taught, and I feel like that once you have put something out there and taught it to a group and said, yes, you can use this, it's out. It's out of the bag. And no, I wouldn't like for, say, a troupe in Omaha to look at somebody else's troupe doing a choreography I taught them in a workshop and then copy it and call it their own. That would frustrate me to no end. But I don't know how you would, not that I know anybody in Omaha, guys. I'm just letting you know. I know no one in Omaha. I just pulled that out of the hat. Love you, Omaha. Would love to come and teach you a choreography. But, I don't know how you would deal with that other than, I guess you would see it probably on the internet. That would probably be how you would see it. And you would simply say, here's my version of this choreography from a year before. So just so we're clear.
Mm-hmm. But I think, in most of these situations where we're talking about, troupe membership, it's most likely to be a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
I thought it was okay to do this, or I didn't think it was okay to do this. But, when you do have actual legal ownership, if somebody leaves the troupe, is it okay if you keep going? Just, those little discussions can be really helpful, especially if they left like before an important gig that you were preparing for.
Yeah, I would think so. Definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually had an issue with my first group because they wanted to continue doing a choreography that we had been taught by a teacher. And I was like, that is not our choreography. We were working on it and polishing it in her class, and we were working on it and dancing it so that we could start to work together, but it was not our choreography, so we have to do our own choreography now. And this is when I first got started, and I wasn't sure if I knew how to choreograph anything or not. I just did it. So, yeah, those issues do come up, and I think it's a matter of, again, just communication.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's take a step in a different direction. So, how can you make sure that your rehearsals run smoothly?
Woo! I think, first of all, knowing what your expectations are of those rehearsals. Like, I will put out an email and say, light your focus candle, which is a phrase that I use a lot, light your focus candle, which I say laughingly. It's kind of a joke from those silly, self-help skits on Saturday Night Live. But I half-heartedly mean it seriously. Like, really, focus now. Let's really pull it together so we can get our work done. Becomes very difficult when you're working with a group of women who love each other and are friends and vested in one another's lives. Different companies have different dynamics. Some companies, girls may not really like each other that much, so they don't care. They don't want to talk. They just want to work. Or they're just ready to work because they have to get this done because they have to go to work Saturday night and they're dancing 3 shows and they need to who's dancing with who in what show. They don't have time to mess around. Ours, because we rehearse at my home, and so when the girls first come in, they're in my office, which is connected to my studio. So I try to get and this takes a few minutes, so it can be a little, girls don't get upset that I want to say this, but it gets a little, I have a moment of like, okay, we got to get to work now. All right, stop talking about boyfriends, husbands, houses. I know it's all important, but let's get together on another night and discuss that. And then we try to feed into the room and try to get us as focused as possible and get working on the matters at hand. And that's how I usually try to work it. I try to give us a few minutes of social time. Typically, social time will kind of start to pop up again, especially with certain. It's like, okay, guys, I hate to be the green meanie here, and I hate to be the one that has to rein it back in, but let's get those candles going and really start to focus on what we're doing, because we have 3 more rehearsals for X, Y, and Z, or whatever that is, whatever show is coming up. And they know. They usually are really, really good about it. But I mean, I'm very blessed because I have very dedicated girls in this company, and they're not only dedicated to each other and to the company, but they're dedicated to the standard that I've kind of set for the company. And I have very high standards. So, and I expect everybody to work as hard as I do. So that says a lot that they're willing to. And my only frustration becomes when they're not, or if they're not, or if I know somebody's slacking or not working as hard. I get frustrated because I work really hard. So they know that they've got a certain, standard to live up to. That's kind of how I kind of rein them back in. And like I said, I'm lucky. The way I do it in classes or in larger groups or with my class group, and if the doorbell starts ringing, I might have to run down the stairs with my headset on and answer the door. But the way I handle it in larger groups is that I'll just stop talking, and then I'll look at the person who's talking. And usually, within about a half a minute, about 30 seconds have gone by, that person realized that she's still talking and I'm staring at her, and they'll stop. And I hate having to do that, but sometimes you have to do that. Like, I love you, but you have to shut up now so we can get this work done. That's how
one thing that I've found that works well in classes, and it's not so much a interrupt them when they're talking in the middle of class, but just getting everybody focused at the beginning, is I just turn the music on.
Yeah.
Just like little tiny cues like that work great.
Yeah, I'll just start dancing. they're out floating around doing this thing in the bathroom, in the water, doing the talking. I'll just start dancing. Like, well, if you want to miss the warm-up, then go right ahead. I might do something interesting. And usually they do. They show up. It's right. You put the music on. It's perfect.
Yeah. Now, when we're talking rehearsals, how do you deal with scheduling?
This too gets problematic, especially when you have girls who may be dancing in multiple companies or having, doing their own solo work. But we have a set night, one night a week for our company. Our night is Wednesday night. If we have big shows coming and we have big events coming up, we will do more, as much as needed. And so I just have to sit down and schedule with everybody. Our current night is Wednesday night. Everybody knows it's Wednesday night, and we are on hiatus through the holidays. We just had our big holiday party last night. So we got to have our love fest and get in the hot tub and drink a little wine and have some fun. And I try to provide those opportunities, too, so everybody gets to blow off some steam and catch up and really feel like we are a family and invested, because we are. But, yeah, we just decide on the night, and ours is Wednesday, and that's when they know they've got to rehearse, and we're here by 8 o'clock, and off we go until 10 or later if we need it.
And how do you work around absences? Because no matter how hard you work at scheduling, somebody's going to miss at least some rehearsals.
I find that because my girls have known we have a long-standing Wednesday night straight up, that they're very adherent to that schedule. Like, they know that's their night, they know that's our night, and that's just what they do. It's like getting up and going to work in the morning. So it's part of their job. It's part of their job to be here. When they have things that happen, like one of my girls was traveling a lot with one of her jobs, and so she was going back and forth to Japan very frequently, and she felt like I'm missing a lot of shows and I'm missing a lot of rehearsals. And it's like, we do videos. We'll do video of choreography so that everybody gets a copy of the video. And we do this with choreographies now straight across the board so that they can take it home and rehearse on their own as well. And they're responsible for that. You have to make everybody personally responsible for knowing the choreographies and knowing the work, and they can work on it a little bit at home as well during the week.
That seems
and
like
it
one
shows
of the things that you really need to set in those, preliminary expectation discussions is how much outside of rehearsal work is this going to take.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, how much are you going to be? I mean, it's like I start telling them from the time they're, my students as well. I have my students who are just like, oh, well, I can't dance it if you're not, we're getting ready for the Dance Garden Fiesta right now. And some of the girls are like, well, I can't dance it if you're not in front of me. It's like, well, you owe it to every member of this group to know that choreography forwards and backwards in your sleep without seeing me at all. Because what if somebody happens to be looking at you, or you're in their peripheral vision and you mess up, and then you cause them to mess up because you happen to be completely in their eye line. So you owe it to all of us within the group. I mean, there's a responsibility that comes to it. That comes with it. You're not just responsible for yourself anymore. You're responsible to all these women in the group, because you owe it to them to look as good as you possibly can, so you make them look good, so we all look good. Yes, that needs to be. Yeah, that's definitely something that has to be addressed straight up. And that's one of those things too. Like, if you got a girl who's slacking, you have a private conversation and just go, yeah, sorry, you don't know it yet.
Now, we've talked about a lot of kind of the hard work aspects of being in a troupe, but, unless this is a real hustle, money-making kind of troupe, people aren't getting necessarily that much financial benefit from it. So, how do you keep it fun and satisfying?
I wish I had a better answer for this. I try to keep it as stimulating dance-wise as possible. I mean, certainly with the girls that I work with, I've worked with them, two of them in particular, from the time they were baby dancers. Like, literally, they started with me. So choreographies have gotten consistently harder and harder as they've gotten more and more proficient and are better and better dancers. I mean, they're amazing dancers now. All my girls are soloists in their own right at this point. They're just incredible. But you kind of have to tailor the choreographies to the level of dancers that you have. And you do want it to be fun. I mean, if it's not fun, it's not worth doing, whether you're making money or not. If it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. None of it. And this really is about camaraderie and about, hopefully, about women loving and supporting each other and learning to love and support themselves as women. So I try not to lose that. I really try not to lose that. And there are times when, like we'll be working on something really, really hard, a hard piece for a hard show, a big high-profile show where, and like I said in the beginning, I'm certainly not perfect. I get stressed too, and I want everything to be perfect. And like I said, I want everybody to work. I have a very high expectation level of myself, and I expect everybody to work at that level. I expect everybody to work as hard as me and work the way I work, and not everybody does, so sometimes that's a little bit of a bitter pill I have to swallow. To kind of like, okay, not everybody works like you. They work a little differently. Step back and give them time. So yeah, you have to try to remember how to keep the fun in it, and I really try, and sometimes I get scared. I'm like, I'm working them too hard. But then we have parties like last night, and everybody gets together, and we have a lovely time, and they look at me as we're going into this 3-week hiatus, and they're going, we're ready for more. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing right, but I must be doing something right. I just try to come from a place of love and be as understanding and as open as possible, and go have a party every now and then. Go have a party. I go out with them dancing when I can. We're going to 70s disco night at Wah Wah Wah. Like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, and I was in an improv comedy group for a couple of years, and we would just always go out to dinner after every rehearsal. All 7 of us would just pile into a nearby restaurant and, eat something and hang out afterwards. And it wasn't like a huge extra thing. It was, maybe an hour at most, and that was a really big deal.
Hugely important. We, because the girls all have work in the morning, so it starts to get a little bit late, but I have a hot tub. And so
that sounds wonderful after a rehearsal, let me tell you.
Right? They all have a bikini here. Most all of them have a bikini here. It just hangs in the bath in the shower. And we just throw our bikinis on and run down there and jump in the tubby. We hadn't been doing a lot of that lately. And so we got in last night, and a couple of girls had to go home before they got in, but 4 of us got in, and we're like, we need to reinstate this as something we do at least once a month because it's so much fun. So much fun. So going to dinner, getting a hot tub, sit down and have a chat, whatever, share a glass of wine, whatever, just have a good time for a moment. I think that's really important stuff.
And, you and I met at the MECTA Professional Dance Conference and Retreat, and some of the best bonding and the best conversations we had at that event were in the hot tub. So folks out there who have access to a hot tub, I don't have one here in Boston. We don't have enough land for it or the weather for it. But if you've got one, use it. They're magic.
We really did have a lot of fun in that hot tub.
I think there were 20 of us up until 1 in the morning.
I'm surprised they didn't kick us out. Do you still have your hot tub badge?
I do. It's about 8 feet away from me right now. I can see it. I have it hanging on my wall.
Mine's right here hanging in my studio. All my badges. MECTA Pro was a wonderful event. It really, really, really was.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're getting close to time, so I have just a couple more questions for you, and then we better get to taking questions from our people. This is the least pleasant part of all of this, but, any group is going to have some kind of conflict, right? People are people. So how do you deal with drama or troupe crises?
It really is tough. It really is tricky. I try to always remember to come at the situation from a place of love. Now, having said that, I will not lie to you and tell you that I am always perfect. I'm not. I'm human. Like you just said, we are all human. There are some people sometimes who will push your buttons so hard that eventually you get pushed off the cliff. And so I'm not going to lie and tell you that hasn't happened to me. It has. But I really, really try to stay as level and fair and check my ego at the door. And speaking of door, there's my dog, so sorry, I'm going to open my door and let my dancers in. Hi, come on in. So you just try to check that at the door and try to get through it as well as possible. Sorry about the barking.
No problem. So what are some of the kinds of drama that you see in troupes?
Well, in my first company, there were jealousy issues. There were jealousy issues with boyfriends and jealousy issues with skill level and just crazy, wacky stuff in some ways sometimes. It was just like, really? Really? We're grown-ups, ladies. We're grown-ups. So put that away. And you know, you just, strange things happen. A lot of times, somebody who really, really, really wants to dance with you, you think really wants to dance with you, and perhaps perhaps it's what they thought, and then they don't really want to, or they get snarky or sarcastic or mouthy. That can be an issue, you know, because it's like undermining your authority, and they really try to get at you that way. I've seen those things happen. People get mad at each other for what, you know, the reasons that they get mad at each other, silly ones, most of them. And, you know, I just find that if you just step back, everything can be resolved if you just stay calm about it and try to really come to it from a place of love. But that's the best way I can I can think to handle it. The Cancerian in me wants to walk sideways and far away from all conflicts. But, you know, they have to be dealt with. So you just do. There's phone calls you don't want to make, but you have to make them.
And, you know, are there circumstances where you might have to eject a troupe member instead of them choosing to leave on good terms?
I'm sure there are. I have not had to do that in this company. In any of my companies, basically, first one dissolved, the second one dissolved, just naturally on its own. I've not had to fire anyone, but there are those instances where I could imagine that a troupe mama might have to do that. Not an easy thing to do. But yeah, if a person were problematic enough, you would have to do that. I have dealt with a friend, troupe mama, a very famous troupe mama here in town, who has had she's had to fire people just because they've gotten. I feel like they became very big for their britches really fast, and she's like, no, won't have it, and she'll fire them fast. She's swift and efficient. So, you know, I haven't had to do it, thankfully, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. And if somebody finds themselves in a situation like that, you know, I know that you haven't had to do this yourself, but what would you consider a fair process for that? Like, would you do warnings, or in some circumstances, would it be a no warning thing? Like, you know, for example, if somebody stole from another member, that would be a you're out lady in my book.
Oh, that'd be out. That would be out. Yeah, that would be out. That would be out. Out. Any sort of physical altercation, definitely out. You know, they're just things you don't tolerate. I guess it's hard for me to even address them because I'm so blessed in that I have so many really wonderful women in my life. But sorry, my dog is barking again. But yeah, it's I'm sorry, Nadir. One more time. Refresh.
Sure. So, you know, if you did have to eject somebody, but it wasn't one of those really extreme cases like, you know, theft or something,
right.
What do you think would be a fair process for doing that? Would you have, like, warnings or probation or?
Yes. I would say the first thing is, you know, like give someone a chance to get things together. I'm sorry, I have to walk downstairs. My dog's going to bark. So I would definitely, okay, sorry. I would want to give them an opportunity. Lucy, this is Lucy, everybody. She just had hi Lucy. She just had surgery. She had had 2 tumors removed, but she's doing fine. But she's just fussy, so I apologize. So yeah, I'd want to give them Lucy, hush. I'd want to give them time to. I'd want to give them time. I'd want to give them time to, try and pull it together. If they're not pulling it together, sorry. If they're not pulling it together in an amount of time, you want to ask them to go. I mean, it's just the only thing that you can do. Because it becomes disruptive to the troupe. I mean, I will tell you, I've had situations where I realize a dancer is really holding my entire group back, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating to everybody, and you don't want that to continue because your girls will get frustrated and then they'll want to go.
Yeah.
You'll start losing them, and that's not good.
All right. Well, I think we're just about ready to start taking questions. But before we do that, let me just tell folks. No, actually, let's go ahead to this first. So, if people take one thing away from the call, what would you want that to be?
One thing about working with a troupe? Communicate. Always communicate. And check your ego at the door.
That makes the communicating part easier anyway.
It does.
All right.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. And if people want to learn more from you, if they want more DeVilla, or if they want to see your troupe, how can they do that?
If they want to see more DeVilla or Isis-Siren-Sekhmet, you can check out my website, www.devillarocks.com. I do put some of my videos on there. I put some of our videos on there, not everything, but all the information about where and what we're doing is always pretty much freshly posted. We perform in Hollywood at Moon of Tunis Restaurant. We are currently on hiatus from our monthly show until the spring. We always go down January, February so that we can work on new fun troupe stuff to present to all of you. We'll be at Cairo Shimmy Quake this year. We will be in Vegas this year in some capacity. Waiting for everything to open up there so we can sign up. We're excited about it, and we're kind of all over.
And if somebody wanted to, say, bring you to their city to teach, either you or the group, is that something that you'd be open to?
Absolutely, I do. I've started teaching nationally now, and I love it. I've just had so much fun. Like I said, I was just in Yuma, went to Memphis last year. Want to go to Richmond. I went to Richmond. I want to go back to Richmond. I'm open. I really want to start teaching more and more and more all over. I love teaching so much. It's my favorite thing. I teach at Dance Garden here on Saturdays, and I got to tell you, I just taught an Isis Wing workshop. We're going to perform on Sunday with 15 girls. 15 girls in Isis Wings. It was fantastic. So I love my job. I couldn't love this anymore. Blessed and lucky.
And you mentioned that your other job is as a professional makeup artist, and I understand you have a makeup DVD.
I do. I have a makeup DVD that I co-wrote and produced and performed in with Princess Farhana, who is one of my dearest friends. And it's a really great 2 DVD set. It's how to do your stage makeup. It's called Bombshell. And we've got looks from the 1920s to the 1970s and 1940s. All straight on through. We've got a golden goddess. We've got a more mature face. So for those of you like, well, how do I do? I'm starting to get a little crinkly. What happens to all of us? So we've got everything in there for everybody, people of every range of color and age. And I'm really proud of it. It's a really, really solid piece of work. So if you're interested in learning makeup skills, I would highly recommend you can go to Princess Farhana's website and order it. I believe it's $25.
And I'll include a link in the show notes on the website that'll take you directly there if you want to grab a copy of that. Excellent. All right, so I think we'll open it up for question and answer. So I did receive a couple of questions that people submitted anonymously, because sometimes when we get into, troupe conflict questions, people don't necessarily want to be identified. But if you are on the phone, you're welcome to ask a question. Just press ** to unmute yourself. That works if you're on the phone or if you're on Skype. But on Skype, you have to do that on the Skype keypad, not on your keyboard. And if you're listening on the webcast, you can type in the little chat box on the right. That's got the little speech bubble. Now, if you're going to unmute yourself, you can either identify yourself if you're comfortable with it, or just tell us that you don't want to be identified. If you are typing in a question in the chat box, please, please, please start with anonymous, because it will show me your name, and I don't want to read that off by mistake. So again, if you're on the phone, it's **, Skype ***, or you can type that in. So while we're waiting, let me read off one of the first questions that we got anonymously.
Okay.
Okay. Because being a capable dancer / choreographer and being a capable leader / manager are two different skill sets, what are some of the ways that members of a troupe could diplomatically encourage and support an artistic director whose leadership or management skills need development?
That's a really great question.
I thought so too.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good question, and very well written. Thank you, Anonymous. Well, I think first of all, we all know what our strengths and weaknesses are. I think if you're even slightly aware, you know where your strengths and weaknesses lie. And so I think maybe having a conversation about, like, instead of saying, we don't think you're as strong in this department as you should be, and we want to take over, I think perhaps approaching it from this may seem a little overwhelming to you, so maybe we could help you, or how can we help you, or posing something in terms of, I feel, you might need some help here. How might I be of assistance to you in that way? I think those are good ways of kind of broaching that. Does that help?
I hope so. I know
Okay.
I'm not listening today because she said she couldn't make it live. Now, if she does need follow-up, is that something that you'd be comfortable being approached about privately, or?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and what would be the best way to do that?
Email me.
Okay, what's your email?
DeVilla Rocks, DeVillaraks @gmail.com.
Okay, great. So Anonymous, if you didn't get quite the answer you need, DeVilla is happy to talk to you about that some more over email. All right, phone folks or Skype folks, you can press ** to unmute yourself and ask your question. Nobody yet, so let's go on to our next submission. I teach a large number of students, and they've been asking me for performance opportunities. I'm thinking about starting a student troupe, but it would be quite a lot of work for me and primarily a learning opportunity for them. Can I charge them for my troupe leadership services, either by charging them for a troupe class or in some other way?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you can charge them. And what you say is, you put it under the guise of, this is your performance student company. And you start it that way and let them know this is what your charge is going to be, so that I get some benefit from creating these choreographies and creating these opportunities for you. And then they will come and take your class, learn the choreography, and you have given them performance opportunities, and that's a lovely way to do it. It's very beneficial to all. I do what I call Homegirl Classes, which is what's going on in the other room right now. My students come to take classes at my house, and I'm usually working with a choreography that they're going to be presenting somewhere, and these are my students, and I call it Homegirl Classes. They pay me for my time. I give them, they get like pretty much semi-privates, 4 to 6 girls in there, and so it's beneficial to everyone. They get a choreography, they get a performance opportunity. It's lovely. It's a lovely way to handle that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really interesting question, too, because I've been hearing a lot of discussion on Facebook, not necessarily among students, but people who are out there performing in some capacity, about this kind of like question of pay to play. You know, is it okay to have to pay for a ticket for a show that you're in, for example? And so I think it is good to remember that performing is not always a gift. Sometimes it's a gift that somebody is giving you, is to have the opportunity to perform, especially in the student capacity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think we're going to say this is last call for questions. So if you're on the phone or Skype and you want to call in, you can unmute yourself by pressing ***, or type that in the question box at left. All right, and I think let's call it a night. So thank you so much, DeVilla.
Thank you. No questions.
No
Did I cover everything?
I guess everybody's too shy, too, although we did cover a lot.
Good.
I'd also like to give special thanks to our sponsor, Shadia Costume Design. So if you'd like to check out her custom designs or take advantage of her revamping services, you can go to shadiacostumedesign.com. And thanks, everybody, for coming, and thanks for those of you who submitted questions. Those were good ones. This is the end of the call, but that doesn't mean that the conversation has to end. We've got a private Facebook group just for Clubhouse folks, and I'll send out an email shortly with an invitation to that group. There is an approval delay because it is a private group, so you can discuss these things privately. So after you request to join the group, you will have to wait until I approve you before you can post. So don't worry if that doesn't take right away. I'll also include a link to the call recording, so if you want to listen to this again and pick up on something you missed, you can do that, or you can share it with someone else. And I'll also include a link to DeVilla's site and to the makeup DVD, so if you want your own copy of Bombshell, you can get that. And the email will also include a link to our feedback survey. So I run the Clubhouse, but it's for all of us. So if you have particular topics that you'd like to see or speakers that you'd like me to invite, or if there's anything else that I can do to improve this, I would love to hear it. Our next call is scheduled for Saturday, January 24th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and my guest, Amity Elise, will be talking about tax considerations for dancers. She's a CPA and a tax expert, so you are going to love this one. It is going to be U.S. specific, so those of you outside the U.S., the specifics won't necessarily be applicable to you, but you may get some useful tips anyway. And the last thing that I want to say is that this is the come-on-in kind of Clubhouse, not the no-boys-allowed kind. So if you want to invite somebody to join us, you can do that at bellydancegeek.com/clubhouse. And until next time, happy dancing. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nadira, that was wonderful. Thank you.
My pleasure. I will let you go and have a great night.
Okay, I will talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye, doll.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. For more geektacular resources, visit bellydancegeek.com.